Welcome everyone to the Reading Veterans Day ceremony. I'm going to bring up to this podium at this time our town manager, Matt Cornelis.
Thank you very much, Will. Good morning. On behalf of the town of Reading, it is my pleasure to welcome you to our Veterans Day ceremony. Thank you to the Reading Select Board who are behind me today, our Veteran Services Officer, Will Valier, our guest speakers, and all the staff and volunteers that made this day possible. We gather today to remember the brave men and women of our armed forces who have dedicated themselves and their lives to the service of our country. We express our deep gratitude and admiration for what they have done and what they continue to do in the furtherance of all of our freedom. I ask that if there are veterans here today in attendance, to please stand if they are able and be recognized with a round of applause. Thank you very much for your service. I'd also ask those of us who have veterans in their families or friends who are veterans to remember them today. I have made it a habit to contact my friends and family members who are veterans on Veterans Day to say that I am thinking of them and to thank them for their service, and I urge you all to do the same. As I did last year, I would like to recognize and thank members of the Good Samaritan Masonic Lodge for their generous donation of the flagpole display we see here before us. We are pleased once again to hold this event in Memorial Park at the spot of this impressive landmark. And we will be again raising the military flags as part of our program later today. So thank you all for attending. I wish you all a very happy Veterans Day and a joyous Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Good morning. Please join me in prayer or personal thought if you so freely choose to. Eternal God, saving protector of all, we invoke your choicest blessings upon the men and women who come here to Memorial Park in Reading, Massachusetts, on this, the 11th day of the 11th month of the 11th hour, Veterans Day morning, 2025. We give honor to all the veterans for their selfless service to our nation and our Commonwealth when they gallantly donned their uniforms to defend our country against oppressive forces in times of war, or guard and protect, rescue, and assist during times of peace. As we commemorate the dedication of those here, help us, O Lord, to learn from their example, integrity, and devotion for what it means to be proud Americans, so that generations to come will be inspired to answer the call when the need arises. Merciful Creator, strengthen our faith in the democratic foundations of our nation, and fortify us with courage and perseverance to face the future with confidence and without fear. May all the elected officials continue to serve the needs of all citizens of Reading, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and our United States of America with the utmost loyalty, fidelity, and zeal. May the works of their hands enrich our fertile land, so that the unity of purpose and harmony of spirit always shines forth. May all those who defend our nation in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, Space Force be safe and sound and serve you, our great nation, with honor. Always watch over their families and loved ones. Bless us, O Lord our God, on this 2025 Veterans Day, and we say amen.
Please rise, post the colors, and the standing and singing of the national anthem. thank you, Reading Memorial High School Choir, for that beautiful rendition of our national anthem. Next to the podium will be our Select Board Chair, Christopher Hale.
Thank you, Will. Thank you to the choir for that. On this Veterans Day, the Reading Select Board pauses to honor the bravery and sacrifice and selfless service of our veterans, past and present, who have protected the freedoms we hold dear. To every man and woman who's worn the uniform, including many of the heroes who proudly call Reading home here today, please know your town is deeply grateful and stands beside you today and every day. Thank you for your service. May we always strive to live up to the values you fought to defend. Last month, I had the privilege of attending the premiere of the Hal Croft documentary. For those who may not know, Mr. Croft was a legendary RMHS track coach and English teacher and a United States Marine. In 1967, during the brutal hill fights in Vietnam, he saw intense combat and earned a Silver Star for gallantry in action and received the Bronze Star for dragging 4 wounded Marines to safety under fire. Mr. Croft has been remarkably candid about how these experiences and the PTSD that followed profoundly shaped his life. Watching his story on screen brought the true weight of days like today into sharp focus for me. That's precisely why one of the very first things Melissa Murphy and I did when we took leadership of the Select Board earlier this year was to bring back the Pledge of Allegiance to the opening of every meeting. In Reading, those 20 seconds of reciting the pledge are a small but meaningful way to honor the veterans we celebrate today, especially local legends like Mr. Croft and those of you here today, who risked everything so we could gather freely in that room. It's a quiet reminder to everyone present and everyone watching from home that the rights that we exercise in those meetings were bought with blood, and it is our solemn duty to never take them for granted. Thank you.
Next to the podium will be our Vice Chair, Melissa Murphy, read the Governor's Proclamation.
Good morning, everyone. Whereas, since the Commonwealth's earliest days, thousands of men and women have served our country in defense of freedom and liberty, and whereas, on November 11th, 1918, after 4 years of conflict, the armistice was signed in the Forest of Campaign by the Allied nations and Germany, ending World War I, the war to end all wars, and whereas, since that day, every November, people from around the nation have gathered to honor our veterans. And whereas, in November 2025, the world will commemorate the 107th anniversary of the armistice that ended the fighting in World War I at 11 a.m., November 11th, 1918, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. And whereas there are approximately 300,000 veterans living in Massachusetts, and whereas, in recognition of the sacrifices made by those who have served our great nation, Massachusetts remains committed to supporting its veterans community through the HERO Act, honoring, empowering, and recognizing our service members and veterans. And whereas today we are reminded of the great sacrifices and contributions our veterans have made to our country, and whereas we honor and salute those who have served our country throughout the generations with honor, patriotism, and courage. And whereas it is appropriate that all Massachusetts residents remember the bravery of those who served their country so that their dedication and sacrifices serve as a reminder of the cost of our freedom. Now, therefore, I, Martha T. Healy, Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, do hereby proclaim November 11th, 2025 to be Veterans Day.
Thank you, Vice Chair Murphy. Next to the podium would be our guest speaker, Navy veteran Stephen Father Zoukas.
My fellow veterans, town officials, Reading townspeople, and everyone else here. It's great to see all of you. And it's impressive that you're here despite A, the cold, and B, you probably knew that I was speaking. My father, Paul, grew up in Cambridge as one of 8 children of Lithuanian immigrants, while my mother, Louise, grew up in Worcester as one of 5 children whose grandparents, on both sides of the family, were Lithuanian immigrants. My parents met in the fraternity, the Knights of Lithuania. They settled in Norwood due to friends living there and St. George Lithuanian Parish. Growing up, my father, a Navy veteran, would dutifully drive me to the Brighton neighborhood of Boston on the first Saturday from May to October, where St. Gabriel Parish would have a communion breakfast which began with confession, followed by Mass, followed by prayers and a rosary for the conversion of Russia, followed by Marian hymns, followed by a bacon and eggs breakfast with a speaker. With both my parents involved in the Knights, an organization that would regularly give reports on the atrocities committed against occupied Lithuania during the time of the Cold War and Soviet occupation. They would in turn discuss these events at home along with the stories of their own families. Hearing this news and family history on a regular basis along with my sister Barbara and brother Peter, combined with learning about world history and social studies and in history class, caused me to try to imagine my relatives overseas and sympathize with their plight. I also began to imagine what it would be like to give up my freedom and live the plight they were forced to live instead. I then made the decision, after applying and being accepted to 4 local colleges, that to defend the freedom that I enjoyed in these United States was what I wished to do after the completion of high school. I went to the Navy recruiter and found myself in boot camp 24 days after graduating Norwood High School. Since I graduated in 1978, I was happy that I did not have to make up the 2 weeks of snow days the blizzard of '78 left behind in its wake. During my time on the only ship I served aboard, the United States ship Halsey Guided Missile Cruiser CG-23, I served as a machinist mate. The main function of the machinist division underway was to provide the ship with propulsion, electricity, and fresh water. I worked my way to being an engine room supervisor while underway. I served aboard the ship from February 1980 to May of 1984. During the time I served, our country engaged in conflict with Grenada, maintained a vigilant military presence in and around Lebanon, downed 2 Libyan jet fighters over the Mediterranean Sea, and the Iranian hostages reached the end of their 444-day captivity. Without minimizing the bravery of veterans directly engaged in those campaigns, the campaigns were not large enough to engage but a limited portion of the military. The vast majority of the military was engaged in a cat-and-mouse deployments amidst the threat of nuclear war, showing that our military was ready as it could be if the Soviet Union or any entity within their sphere of influence decided to engage in an act of aggression against a member of NATO. The only encounter my ship had with the Soviet military was having to refrain from being outside except to work when the command of the ship knew that a Soviet spy plane would be flying overhead while we were deployed in the Indian Ocean. I ended up participating in 1.25 Western Pacific cruises while on board the ship before being honorably discharged. As I look back on my service as a veteran, I do so with two perspectives. The first is that I and those I served with, quote, held the line long enough for President Reagan's plan, that of creating an arms race with the Soviet Union in order to break them financially, to bear its intended fruit. It would start to show 5 years later with his legendary speech at the Berlin Wall and end with the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991. Secondly, it placed me in contact with many veterans who I have shared experiences during their military service with me, whether it be during World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, as well as other campaigns. I appreciate their acceptance of my experience. Veterans know that we join to serve without conditions on where or how. That is to be defined and happen according to the orders we receive. I am grateful to my fellow veterans' full acceptance of me, even though the action I experienced does not hold a candle to theirs. It was in the last year of my service that I pondered the seminary. I was an attendee of the Wednesday evening Catholic Club of the 32nd Street Naval Station in San Diego. After being encouraged by one of my two Navy Catholic chaplains, Father James Boyd, I attended a come and see weekend at the Diocese of San Diego's College Seminary on the campus of the University of San Diego. When I found out that credits I earned at the seminary college were 100% transferable, and that the purpose of the seminary was to discern, not to show up knowing you wanted to be a priest, I decided to give it a try and applied for the Diocese of San Diego. The other Navy Catholic chaplain, Father Burke, a Jesuit and former professor of St. John's Seminary in Boston, found out that I applied to San Diego. He promptly asked me into his office after a weekday mass. He asked me if I thought entering the seminary was an important decision. When I gave him a definite yes, he proceeded to ask me if I thought if it was more appropriate to attend seminary college in an institution or a country club. As I entered Boston St. John's Seminary 41 years later, 41 years ago, I should say, I found the structure of the church's chain of command all too familiar with what I experienced the last 6 years of my life before that in the Navy. My service prepared me for the seminary, which prepared me for the priesthood, which prepared me for priestly service in the parishes to which I have been assigned: St. Margaret, Dorchester; St. Peter, Lithuanian, South Boston; St. Elizabeth, Milton; St. Edward the Confessor, St. Jude, Medfield, Norfolk, before reporting for duty here in Reading. I thank God for the opportunity to serve His people, especially you, the townsfolk of Reading. I also thank God for the service of the veterans He has placed in my life and their example, which inspires me to this day. May God bless them, all those presently serving, as well as all of you. God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Steve. Reading Memorial High School Choir, come on back up. Thank you again for that wonderful rendition, God Bless America. Thank you. At this time, I'm going to place a wreath at the World War I Memorial boulder that stands here with the statement, "Honor the hero who gave his life that we might live in freedom." Next to the podium will be Mike Terry from Good Samaritan Lodge. Mike?
Good morning, and thank you, Will. Thanks for allowing a member of Good Samaritan Lodge to speak at this marking of Veterans Day. We're glad to supply the branch of service flags for the poles we donated last year. And as a reminder, everyone is welcome back at our function room at 110 Haven Street after today's ceremony. Please use the Linden Street entrance. When I was a child, I talked like a child, thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. Many years ago, my mother sent me lots of pictures that I had drawn when I was young, and many followed a familiar theme, a crudely drawn fighter plane or a ship engaged in a big battle against the bad guys. On the back of one, I had written in a childish hand, "This is dedicated to my father. Even though he didn't shoot down any planes or sink any ships, I still love him." I never served, and it is a life regret, though many of my family members and ancestors did all the way back to 1775. One of the things that has always intrigued me is how many veterans I've met who downplay their service. I was just a telephone repair guy. I was a cook. I kept Norfolk, Virginia safe from the Viet Cong. I was a ship's doctor, never in danger. I was an avionics specialist, never in combat. You get the idea. And this tracks with the way our armed services operate. For every person pulling a trigger, dropping a bomb, or pushing a lethal button, there are anywhere from 5 to 10 non-combat people supporting them. In my childish mind, in my dedication of the picture I'd drawn, I'd unintentionally denigrated my father's naval service during the Korean War. And in a way, I'd done the same thing to every other person who was not at the very tip of the spear. Every veteran, combat experienced or not, gave our nation, gave every one of us a signed check payable up to and including his or her very life for the defense of our nation and its ideals. You are certainly aware of those times when cooks and band members and telephone repairmen were called upon to set aside the implements of their trade and pick up a rifle. It has happened in every war, ever, one way or another. It's fitting, therefore, that we set aside a day to honor all of our veterans, living and past, and to mark their honorable service, no matter what they did while serving. Every one of them offered their very lives for us, and that is a debt we must always strive to pay. May God always protect those who protect us. I began with a biblical quote, and I'll close with one. Greater love hath no one than this, that he lay down his life for his friends. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Terry. At this time, I'd like to invite up the members of the appropriate service flag, come up and I'd like you to raise your flags to the top of the staffs. Members from the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, Coast Guards. I'm going to ask somebody that if we have a Space Force Guardian with us to please raise that flag. If not, we could have an Air Force member raise their flag. I'd say something about the Marine Corps' ability to raise a flag. I was going to ask the Navy to help them tie the knot in the flagpole, but I think they got it under control. The Marines will give you some crayons. I saw that the Army did get to the top first, and Navy was still struggling, so I don't know. I'd like to bring up the Reading Memorial High School choir one more time. Thank you, Reading Memorial High School Choir. That was beautiful. Thank you. I know it's cold out here, and I did have prepared what I wanted to say, but I do not want to keep you in the cold any longer. So I'm going to see if we can get this published, my closing remarks in the Chronicle and the Post, and see if they'll print it for me. And if those that want to come back, I'm inviting back to the Masonic Hall Lodge for a bite to eat, some hot coffee. We've got refreshments there. Please join us. The choir is welcome to join us as well as the Police Honor Guard. Love to see you all back at Masonic Hall Lodge. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to our chaplain, Colonel Larry Beta.
God of compassion, God of dignity and strength, we thank you for this precious blessings of liberty and democracy that were exhibited here this Veterans Day morning. Watch over all the veterans of the United States in recognition of their loyal service to our nation. Bless them with wholeness and love. Shelter them, heal their wounds, comfort their prayers, grant them peace. Protect them and their families from loneliness and want. Grant them lives of joy and bounty. May their dedication and honor be remembered as blessings from generation to generation. God bless our veterans. God bless the town of Reading. God bless our Commonwealth. And God bless America. Amen.
Please remain standing for the playing and rendition of taps.